Hello and welcome to another World Values Day live conversation. I'm Anna McAfee. I am delighted to welcome Alan Williams to the series to talk about the values economy and why it's why we're saying shh. I'm talking about the fact that it's here, which I love the topic, Alan, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for the invitation, Anna. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. Okay, and just if you're just tuning in, please do let us know in the comments that you can see and hear. It's always good to get a little bit of interaction. And if you do have any questions for Alan, please do pop them in the chat. Equally, if you are watching the replay and you have some questions about this, please, you can also comment because we will pick up those comments after the live stream. So either way, whether you're live or watching replay, please do share some insights or feel free to ask questions, and Alan can come back and get to those later. But yeah, I'm excited to be thinking about this, and I'm really happy with the topic, Alan. But so my first question is, please tell us about the values economy. What is it and why is it relevant?
Yeah, well, this goes back a few years when I was thinking, things are different and becoming different. And I just put some time to be thinking about what it was actually that was making that difference, and came up with the C to the power of 3 is how I refer to it. And I'll explain what those are. And it's really that perfect storm of those 3 C's coming together that I believe creates what I refer to as the values economy. So in terms of the 3 C's, the first is choice. And fundamentally, we are making choices in a different way than we used to. And the research shows us that in I think it was the early 1970s, around about 65% of the time, we would make choices based on a very rational basis, and often financial basis. So, it would be, I'm in a shop, I'm looking at this thing, how much is it going to cost? What's the value for money? And I'm going to make a choice based on that. If we fast forward to 2021, actually, the percentages have flipped, and now we make our decisions based on around about 80% emotion, not rationale. And so this, in equivalent terms, is you're in the shop and you're looking at the fair trade products, and you know that that bar of chocolate is 25% more expensive than a competitor brand, but you choose to buy it because you believe that it's the right way that it got to the shelf. So our choices are being made in a fundamentally different way. That's the first C. Then the second C is communication. So this is all to do with the internet and social media. We can communicate our thoughts and beliefs and points of view with millions of people all over the world in a heartbeat, just like that on social media. So that's the second C. And then the third C is control. So it used to be that an organization owned its brand. So what would happen is that the senior guys in an organization would kind of maybe lock themselves away in a dark room for a day or so, come up with what they wanted to be seen as in the world, and then just pump it out there through marketing and public relations and whatever, and kind of almost cross fingers, close eyes, and hope for the best, hope enough people would believe that message. But you can't do that anymore, because the way I describe this is that organizations are no longer what they say they are, but what other people say they are. So in effect, the ownership of the brand has been transferred from the company to the company's stakeholders, and that includes customers, employees, service partners, local communities. So that control is the third C. So you've got choice, communication, and control, the 3 of them all happening at the same time to create this turbocharged impact. So that's why I call it C to the power of 3. And that's what I refer to as the values economy.
That's really interesting. And just a question from one of the LinkedIn users who's watching. Which region or country would those statistics of choice refer to?
It was a US study.
Global? US study,
US
yeah.
study, yeah.
Probably fairly similar across the board, do you think, at a global level?
Yeah, well, that's one specific piece of research, but in general, the research is pointing in the same direction, irrespective of geography, although there will be some differences culturally. And, this should never be taken kind of to be an absolute. So, for instance, sometimes people say, so does that mean that everybody everywhere is using values to make their choices and decisions? And it's like, well, no, they're not, because, we've got a cost of living crisis at the moment. And so some people are stood in the shop looking at those bars of chocolate that we were talking about just now and saying, I'd like to buy the fair trade stuff this month, but I haven't got the money. And so I'm going to buy something different. So, this is not an absolute by any means.
No, that's really interesting. But yeah, so there is a bit of a and probably just to I was going to say there was probably a bit of an overlap as well. What was the third C? So we've got choice,
communication and control.
And control. Yeah. So, and that's all of the brand, which I think is a really fascinating part of this in terms of values washing and greenwashing, and a lot of claims in terms of what you say you do is very much more under scrutiny now. So yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and the truth really gets out a lot faster than it used to. If you go back, say, a couple of decades, it would have been reasonably easy to hide things away and keep things undercover. But now it just gets out so fast. And that, again, that's not to say that the truth always comes out, but people have become, or organizations are becoming more and more aware and more wary that they have to behave in a way that they say they behave, because else people won't trust them.
No, and the trust is really important. We've talked a little bit about this in the 3 C's in terms of probably customer to brand relationship. Do you think can you elaborate perhaps a little bit more on how it would come into play perhaps with an employee and company relationship? Do you think it has a big part to play in that as well?
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think the pandemic period was really a turbocharger for this whole concept as well, because if you take the employee space, the pandemic gave a lot of people time to actually reconsider what was important to them. And I know people, for instance, that have chosen to leave their company, or to leave an industry sector, or to retire, or to get a job where they don't have to go into the office 5 days a week, because they're being driven by what is important to me, and I'm going to make my choices accordingly. So, it kind of amuses me sometimes when I hear the conversation about, should it be work in the office or should it be work from home? It's kind of missing the point, because for me, there are people that like to be in the office. There are also those people that like to work from home, and that the convenience that brings. And there are many people who are very happy to have a blend of that approach. But where organizations, I believe, will have a problem in recruiting talent is where they take a stance for no particular reason. So if a company says, we want everybody to be in the office, it's like, well, you have to back that up. So if, for instance, they say one of our core values is collaboration, and we think it's really important for our people to engage on an informal basis as well as a formal basis, then the employee kind of understands that. But when you just get a mandate, you're expected to be in the office for 5 days a week, I'm not going to give you any reason, it doesn't make sense to people. And so people are making choices about their employer on a similar basis to consumers are making their choices about who they want to buy from. People generally want to work for an organization with whom they can sense an alignment of values with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is really important. And I know, Alan, you do a lot of work within service-based businesses, and your background comes from a very service-based service-based industry, for example. How in these industries in particular can organisations better in values? And what's very specific about the service industry that really highlights?
Well, it's people, Anna. In a service industry, your people are the brand, and the way your people behave will determine what your customers and other stakeholders think of your brand. So, like you say, my background originally was commercial hospitality management. So I used to run 5-star hotels and conference centers and the like. And it still fascinates me, actually, that the person who's answering the call center phone, the reception person who's welcoming the VIP guest, the security guard, these are all people that have a significant impact on the perception of the organization. And yet, at the same time, there are a couple of things, actually. One is that sometimes these people are not paid particularly well. Secondly, in a lot of cases, they're outsourced. And it's like, why would you do that? Why would you not keep tabs on the interaction between your customer and your organization? And for me, it really doesn't matter who employs these people, whether they're employed directly or whether they're outsourced is fine, but just make sure you're on top of it, because I use a phrase, outsourced does not mean out of mind.
Very true. Absolutely. And I think, outsourcing has very much become the norm. And in some ways, I think a lot of organisations are pulling back from it as well, to help embed values, perhaps.
Yeah, and I remember having a conversation with the MD of my employer, actually, and I remember saying to him, I really don't understand why these guys and ladies on our reception desk who are welcoming the most senior people from our most valuable clients, why is it that we pay them less than somebody sat in the finance office inputting data onto a spreadsheet? I don't get it.
It's interesting. First impressions count, don't they?
Certainly do.
Yeah. You're talking about values. I'm curious to get your if you're willing to share, and please, perhaps no names need to be shared, but can you give us some examples, Alan, of where misaligned values have gone horribly wrong, and I guess the lessons from that, be it the client or your own situation, something that perhaps, I think we learn from stories. This is where I'm going with my question. And so how can we learn from others' mistakes when it comes to values alignment and misalignment?
Well, I think the simple answer, and it is simple, that doesn't mean to say that it's easy to do, right? So I think you just have to be true to what you say. That's all. If you behave in line with what you say you believe in, then you're on firm ground. And I was thinking, ahead of this call, I was thinking about you, because PwC, and I know you said not to mention any names, but PwC in Australia, as you probably are aware, have been in the news. And I just looked up the way they describe themselves in the world. And these are the specific words that they use formally to describe their approach. It says they are there to build trust in society and solve important problems. So if you say that's what you stand for, and then you misuse government tax information for commercial gain, don't be surprised that people are going to get upset.
And trust is a really big one. Interestingly, another example in Australia that's really at the moment is Qantas, who's been possibly the most trusted airline. Well, it's certainly been the most trusted airline for Australians for generations. And they're going through quite a big upheaval of really breaking that trust, I think, right now. And a lot of that is to do with values misalignment. I think, it's and not following through and not saying what they'll say they do. So yeah, it's interesting, really
And there
interesting.
are, a couple of other examples. If you think about Facebook, how long ago was that? 3 years or so. Of a mass exodus of advertisers because they just didn't believe in the way Facebook was going about its business. And then if you go back further, the News of the World, a publication here in the UK, actually went out of business over a scandal. And again, that comes down to they were saying they behaved in one way, but they were allowing people in the organization to behave in another way. When the whole thing broke, advertisers just would not support them. And this was, I think it was the oldest publication in the world, or if not the world, then the
Mm.
UK. And it went out of business. So I think that the message here is you've got to take this stuff seriously, because it's not just, it potentially, it might not just be a blip that you'll be able to manage and get over. The consequences can actually be fatal for organizations.
Mm. I think there's also a lesson. I've been doing a bit of work on greenwashing recently, looking into, I guess, the history of it and some examples around it. And I think the lesson in that is that you need to take up, well, at least from my perspective, that I've seen, is that you need to be really open and honest about, for example, perhaps you don't have the most sustainable practices within the business, but you're trying to improve and taking customers on that journey. So whether it's sustainability or whether it's anything else, pick another value that you're trying to embed, trying to improve upon perhaps after these types of examples are coming out and being seen. As you say, you're losing the threes and the control, and you've lost control. Perhaps the way to bring that back is to actually be really open and honest about it and take the customer on that with you, about at the steps that you're taking to improve that, and building that trust back up.
I think it's a really great point, because if I think about my career, when I was younger, it seemed to me that organizations were trying to paint this perfect picture of themselves in order for people to believe them. But we all know that there's no such thing as perfection, right? So I think you're spot on there, that the key is to be authentic, be true to what you say, and just be straight with people. So if you're 10% short of where you want to be, if you're 20% or 50% short of where you want to be, then share that with people, and then have a plan, and then start showing that you're able to deliver on the short-term plan towards the long-term plan, and you will build that trust. And then the other thing as well is that I think in the value space, it's kind of easy to fall into this trap of describing values as this kind of rose garden panacea of loveliness where all is good. And it's just not true. And I think very differently, actually, because I think values are a really helpful handrail for us to be able to navigate what is often a dirty, confusing world. And if we lean on those values to help us arrive at decisions, and we're able to explain in good faith the reason why we did what we did, then people will give us more latitude. No, I think not many people expect perfection. And so the more people that stop trying to make out that they are, the better.
I love that. Yeah, that's really good. Alan, I'm curious about your values. Can you tell us about perhaps one or two of your values that you either in work or in life, and how you put it into practice?
Yeah, that's a good question as well, because I take the view that too many people focus on values in isolation. And I think of values more as operating like a pack of cards. So, if you had a pack of playing cards, you'd never just look at the diamonds or the hearts or the spades or the clubs. They just don't function like that. They need to all be together. And so my values, if I start with excellence, and what I mean by that is doing things so well that people are impressed and enjoy being involved with it. whatever it is. Enjoyment, which is remembering how lucky I am to be doing whatever I'm doing, and it doesn't matter what it is. It can be doing the dishes. Just remember how lucky you are to be doing that. Adaptability, so this is just appreciating that things won't necessarily be as you thought they would be, so just get over that and get on with it and do what needs to be done next. Kindness, so having a good heart, and so doing what you think people would like to experience. And then how many is that? Is that 4 or 5?
That's 4.
I said enjoyment, didn't I? Kindness, excellent. Oh, creativity, of course. How could I forget that? So creativity for me it's more creation than creativity, actually. So when I think about creation, it's working with others to create value where there wasn't before. I really enjoy that. And to answer your question about how that comes to life, those 5, actually, I was thinking about this earlier, have come to life in a conversation that I've been having for a few months now with a healthcare company in the US who wants some help with a service excellence cultural transformation. And that has been fantastic because at the beginning, they said, this is kind of what we want. And I said, kind of, are you sure? And they were very receptive to that, which was a great start because they could have closed it down there, right? So then we had this really creative approach to how we might take things forward. I got some brilliant feedback from them when I went over to Boston to spend some time with them recently, and they were saying, you've looked after us so well and you've just presented everything that we've asked for and more, and we really appreciate that, and that's why we want to continue this exploration. When I was over there, we went out for a lovely dinner and had a good time, so that's the enjoyment bit. And during the process, things have changed. So they set out with a selection process, which they changed kind of 75% down the way. But again, it's like you can either get upset about that or you can just go with it and see what happens next. So we're continuing to have these really positive discussions, and it'll be fascinating to see where we go. They also operate in an area that resonates with me because they look after the most disadvantaged people in society. And I saw a video clip on their website, which was of a guy, he's coming off of opioids, and they had built these kind of wooden shacks for homeless people to have so that their possessions can be safe. And this guy was saying, when I wake up in the morning and I don't have to be thinking about moving on somewhere else for tonight, that just means so much. And my possessions are safe. And the other people living in the other shacks are all like me, going through what I'm going through. And that is, I think that's just so cool from a customer service point of view, but also from a business point of view, because the company is able to deliver the care that those people need a lot more cost effectively because they're in one community than they otherwise would have been able to do if these people were all spread out. So it's a win-win, and I'm fingers crossed we'll be working together for some time to come.
That's great. I love that story as well. It's really good. Now, Alan, you have been involved with World Values Day since the very beginning. I get double checking that. Yes, you're nodding. Good, yeah. Excellent. And so, I think you've had so much contribution to what World Values Day is now. So thank you very much for that. Can you tell us what you have planned for World Values Day this year?
Yeah, quite a lot. So like you say, it's been a fantastic journey, and Charles has just done such a brilliant job in putting so much effort and dedication into making things happen every year on year. And right from the beginning, it was just to create a shop window in time for all of the brilliant work happening in values all over the world, so that the message could be amplified. And it's doing that every year, so that's good to see. And personally this year, I think I'm probably involved in more variety of initiatives and activities than I've ever been involved in. So Values Jam, the card deck, which inspires values-led conversations. There's a number of different things happening there. And I think I might have bitten off more than I can chew, because I'm looking to have a Values Jam every day from the 1st to the 31st of October, which the closer we get to the 1st, I'm realizing that that's a big commitment, but I'm going to give it my best shot. Then Global Poetry Showcase is in its 3rd year now. And this year we've launched the Art of Value Showcase, which is like the sibling for the visual arts. And we've got this absolutely fantastic virtual exhibition that we're going to be able to display the works in this year. And people are really excited about that. I think that could become something very, very big, beyond World Values Day, actually. But we'll have to see about that. And then on the day itself, I've got a number of different working sessions for people to come along to. One is on the values economy. Another is on my 31 practices. So this is a very personal level. How do you put your values into practice every day, and what are the benefits? And that's targeted at young people, actually, because I think we do our young people a disservice in education by basically force feeding them with stuff that they then have to regurgitate to pass a test, and then we say they're educated. Imagine instead if we wake people up to their inner values and give them a better understanding of that, so that when they're at the beginning of their adult life, they can make choices and decisions according to their values, rather than what some either well-intended or maybe not even well-intended teacher is telling them to do. So yeah, lots of variety there.
Great. I look forward to watching some of those and hearing more about them. If anyone is interested in any of it, what Alan has shared, or connecting with Alan, please do reach out. I think LinkedIn's probably best for you, Alan. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, LinkedIn is fine, or else alan@servicebrandglobal.com. That's fine too.
Yeah, but the events and things you'll be posting via LinkedIn.
And they're on Eventbrite as well, actually.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. Well, this has been a really, really good conversation. Thank you for sharing insights, Alan, into the values economy. I think you've given us all quite a lot to think about. And for those that are watching the replay, please do add some comments if you have any, or any questions, and just tag Alan or the World Values Day page, and we can get to those questions for you. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, Alan, for your generosity and time, and I look forward to continuing this conversation over the course of the next month for World Values Day in the newsfeed.
Thanks, Anna.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.